Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into something pretty mind-blowing?
I'm ready.
Okay, perfect. Today we're going to tackle the future of work.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and more specifically how AI and automation could totally revolutionize like everything about work,
It's a hot topic, that's for sure.
for sure. So to get us started, we've got an excerpt from The Future of Work and the Role of Universal Basic Income
Oh, yeah.
by Sarai Hannah Ajai. Have you heard of it?
I have, yeah.
Okay, cool. So it brings up some really massive questions, like what happens if robots take over a ton of the jobs that people rely on today,
Yeah,
and then how would we all make a living in that kind of world?
yeah.
I mean, it sounds like sci-fi, but it could be a lot closer than we think,
It definitely feels like we're getting closer and closer.
for sure. So I don't know about you, but I found the whole thing super fascinating.
Me too.
Okay, so why don't we jump right in?
Sounds good.
So, when you think about work, throughout history, how it's changed, it's kind of crazy how much it's already evolved, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think back to like the really early days, people just traded stuff directly.
They're like bartering, right?
Exactly, like trading a cow for some wheat or a pot for like a pair of
They have
shoes.
giant swap meet for
Yeah.
like everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's pretty wild. But then, like societies, it got more complex.
Way more complex.
So we needed a better way to like exchange value, like something more standardized.
Yeah.
And that's where money came in,
Yeah, money was definitely a game changer.
big time. It kind of paved the way for these huge economies that we have today.
It's crazy to think how different things would be without it.
Totally. But now, get this, we've got artificial general intelligence, or like AGI, and then also advanced robotics on the rise.
Yeah.
So, like, are we maybe on the edge of another huge shift in how we think about work?
It's definitely possible.
Yeah. And I think Ajay makes a really good point in the excerpt. AI is already doing some pretty amazing things.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Well, like legal contracts,
Yeah.
medical diagnoses, even creative stuff.
Yow.
Yeah, like, writing music, making art, all sorts of
Oh,
things.
it's really impressive.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But and here's the thing, that's just the beginning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so even jobs that we used to think were like totally automation proof, the highly skilled ones, like doctors, lawyers, financial analysts, they could actually be affected a lot as AI keeps getting better.
It's a bit unsettling to think about, isn't it?
I know, right? I mean,
I-
some people say like new jobs will always pop up, but this time it feels different.
Yeah,
It's like the scale of potential job losses. It's unlike anything we've seen before.
for sure.
So it makes you wonder, like, if, traditional jobs aren't the main source of income anymore, then how will people, like, support themselves
Right.
and contribute to society?
Exactly. It's a big question.
Huge. And that's where the whole concept of universal basic income, or UBI, comes in.
Ah, UBI. Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about that lately.
Yeah, it's getting a lot of buzz as, like, maybe a solution to the challenges of a post-labor society.
That makes sense.
So basically, it involves, the government giving every citizen a regular income.
Like, no matter what.
Yeah, regardless of whether they have a job or not.
Interesting.
So it's kind of like a safety net for, the robot age.
Robot age. I like that.
Right? It sounds pretty radical, but I kind of vaguely remember learning about something similar in history class.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like way back.
You probably think of Thomas Paine.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, he was an 18th century political thinker, and he proposed the system where everyone would get, like, guaranteed payments.
Oh, wow. So it's not a totally new idea.
Nope, not at all. But what makes UBI so relevant now is how fast automation is accelerating because of, AI.
Yeah, it's like history repeating itself, but with a futuristic twist.
Exactly.
Okay, so the excerpt from Ajay's work, it lays out some potential benefits of UBI.
Okay.
And I gotta say, some of them sound pretty promising.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, one of the big ones is like increased economic security.
Right, because everyone would have that guaranteed income.
Exactly. It could really help people, not have to live paycheck to paycheck. And it could free them from that fear of like, financial ruin.
That would be a huge relief for a lot of people.
Totally. I mean, imagine like what people could do if they had that kind of breathing room,
Yeah.
like pursue education, start businesses, or just focus on things they're passionate about, all without constantly worrying about like making ends meet.
It could be really empowering.
Right. Like people could contribute to society in ways that they couldn't before.
Absolutely.
And it could also be a really powerful tool to fight, that potential for inequality that could come from widespread automation.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, like if automation ends up concentrating a lot of wealth in the hands of like a small group of people, then UBI could kind of balance things out.
Ah, I see. So everyone benefits from the technological advancements, not just a select few.
Exactly. It's about, making sure progress benefits everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's something I've been wondering about. Like, some people are worried that, if fewer people are working traditional jobs, then the economy might take a hit.
Right.
But Ajay suggests that UBI could actually lead to more economic stability.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive, but how do you think that would work?
I'm not sure.
Well, she argues that even with fewer people in those traditional jobs, if everyone's getting a guaranteed income, it would mean that there's still a lot of consumer demand.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. And that would help prevent like a downward spiral of deflation or a recession. It's kind of like, that constant flow of money keeps the economic engine running smoothly.
So even though the nature of work itself is changing, the economy can still stay stable.
Yeah, exactly. I think UBI could provide a buffer against those, economic shocks that might come with like widespread automation.
It's a really interesting idea.
It is. But I got to admit, the thing that I find most exciting about UBI is its potential to like unlock all this innovation and creativity.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Well, think about it. If your basic needs are met, you don't have to worry about like survival. Wouldn't you be more likely to take risks, try new things, think outside the box?
Yeah, I guess so.
Right. It's like if you're not constantly stressed about money, you can, really let your creative juices flow.
So UBI could lead to a whole wave of new ideas and solutions.
Exactly. It's like imagine a world where like everyone has the opportunity to, contribute their talents and ideas without being held back by, just the need to survive. It's a pretty inspiring vision.
It is, but let's be real, there's got to be a catch.
Oh, there's definitely a catch.
Like, how do we pay for all of this?
Yeah, especially in a world where robots are potentially doing most of the work, funding UBI. That seems like a massive challenge.
It does.
So, what are some of the ideas out there?
Well, one idea is something called a robot tax.
A robot tax? What's that?
Well, it would be like a tax on companies that replace human workers with automation.
Oh, okay. So the companies that are like benefiting the most from automation would be the ones helping to, fund the safety net for the people who lose their jobs because of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm, that's interesting. But it makes me wonder, like, how would they even structure a tax like that? I mean, would it be like a flat rate or a percentage of their profits?
Yeah, those are some of the big questions.
And then, like, what about the impact on the economy as a whole? It seems like there could be a lot of unintended consequences.
Oh, for sure. It's a really complex issue.
It is. But okay, so besides a robot tax, what other ideas are there?
Well, another option would be to increase corporate taxes, but specifically for companies that are, making huge profits from AI and robotics.
Ooh, so kind of like targeting those industries that are like really cashing in on automation.
Exactly, like manufacturing, retail, transportation, those kinds of sectors.
So the idea is that the extra tax revenue would go towards funding UBI.
Exactly.
I can see how that would be appealing to a lot of people. It seems, fairer in a way. But wouldn't those companies just like pass the pasta on to consumers, raise their prices?
Yeah, that's a valid point.
It seems like we'd end up right back where we started.
Yeah, economists are still debating that, like, what the real impact on prices would be. It's not a simple thing to figure out.
For sure. Okay, so what else is on the table?
Well, some people have also talked about setting up what they call sovereign wealth funds.
Sovereign wealth funds, what are those?
They're basically like big investment funds that are controlled by the government.
Yeah.
And the idea is that these funds would invest in industries that are, likely to benefit from automation.
Oh, so kind of like betting on the future in a way?
Exactly. And then the returns from those investments could be used to, support UBI programs.
That's interesting. So instead of relying on like one resource, like oil or something, we'd be investing in the very technologies that are driving the shift towards automation.
Precisely. It's a way to like capitalize on the change that's happening.
Okay, I can see how that could work. Are there any other ideas?
Well, there are some more radical proposals out there.
Like what?
Well, some people have suggested, wealth taxes on the ultra-rich,
Oh, well.
the people who, stand to gain the most from automation.
Yeah, that would definitely be controversial.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It would raise a lot of questions about, economic fairness and the role of government.
For sure. It seems like all these funding options have their own, pros and cons.
Yeah, there's no easy answer when it comes to something as big as UBI.
It sounds like we need to, really think this through carefully. We can't just jump in without considering all the angles.
Absolutely. And, it's important to remember that UBI isn't a perfect solution.
Right. Even if we could figure out the funding part, there's still other concerns, right?
Oh, definitely.
Like what are some of the challenges?
Well, for one thing, it would require a huge shift in our political system.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
I mean, we're talking about a fundamental change to how our society operates.
For sure.
And that kind of change doesn't happen easily.
I bet there would be a lot of debate about it.
Oh, absolutely. Like, how much should the UBI payments be? Who should be eligible? How do we prevent fraud?
Right. There are so many details to work out.
And then, even beyond the politics, there are practical considerations.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Well, how do you design a UBI system that's, fair and effective and sustainable in the long term? It's a huge undertaking.
Yeah, it's like building a whole new system from scratch.
Exactly. And then there's the human element.
Oh, right. What about that?
Well, some people worry that, if everyone's getting a guaranteed income, it might discourage people from working.
I could see that.
Like, would people lose their motivation, their sense of purpose?
Yeah, it's a valid concern. It's hard to know how people would react to such a big change.
Yeah. Human behavior is complex. Some people might see it as an opportunity to, pursue their passions or do more meaningful work. But others might just become, complacent.
That's
Something we'd need to study carefully.
Yeah, it feels like we're stepping into uncharted territory here.
We are, in a way. I mean, there's no historical precedent for something like this.
And then on top of that, technology is changing so rapidly.
Exactly. So even if we implement UBI, what happens as automation keeps advancing? Will UBI be able to keep up?
Right. It's like trying to hit a moving target.
And that's why, it's important to emphasize that UBI, it's not a magic bullet.
So it's not the only solution.
No, it needs to be part of a bigger strategy.
Okay, so what else needs to be included? What kind of broader approach are we talking about?
Well, for one thing, education and retraining are crucial.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
We need to make sure people have the skills they need to thrive in this, rapidly changing job market.
It seems like lifelong learning would become even more important than it is now.
Oh, absolutely. The traditional model of going to school for a few years and then working the same job for decades, that's not going to cut it anymore.
Right. And what about social safety nets?
Yeah, those are essential too. Things like healthcare, housing, childcare, those shouldn't be tied to employment status.
So it's about creating a society where everyone has a chance to, not just survive, but actually thrive.
Exactly. UBI could be a part of that, but it's not the whole solution.
That makes sense. It's a lot to take in.
It is.
So where do we go from here?
Well, I think the main takeaway is this. The main takeaway is, I think, that automation, it is changing how we think about work. It's really transforming things. And UBI, well, it could be a good way to deal with some of the, the challenges that come with all this change. But it's not like a one-size-fits-all solution. It has to be part of a bigger, more well-rounded strategy.
So we need to think about education, retraining, and strong social safety nets, too.
Yeah, exactly. All of those things, they need to work together, to create a society that's adaptable and can handle all this change. But even with all that, I still wonder about the human side of things.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, what happens to our sense of, purpose and how we see ourselves in a world where traditional work, maybe it's not such a big part of our lives anymore?
That's a really good point.
Yeah. I mean, how we view work, it's tied to our sense of self-worth, and our contribution to society. So as work changes, maybe we need to redefine what it means to have a meaningful life, what makes us feel fulfilled.
That's interesting.
Maybe we'll see people getting more into creative stuff or being more active in their communities or focusing on, lifelong learning. Who knows?
Yeah, and maybe we'll need to come up with new ways to measure value and contribution that aren't just about traditional economic stuff.
Right, exactly.
It's kind of exciting, but also a little scary to think about all the possibilities.
I agree. It feels like we're, on the verge of a huge shift in how we think about society as a whole.
Totally. And the decisions we make now, they're going to have a big impact on the future.
Well, this deep dive has given me a lot to think about. What started as a simple question about, robots and jobs has turned into like this big exploration of, well, work itself and what it means for us as humans.
I think that's what's so great about these deep dives. They take us in unexpected directions and, challenge us to think differently.
Definitely. So before we wrap things up, is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners thinking about? Well, if the way we define work is changing, then it raises a big question. How do we decide what counts as a valuable contribution to society? Like, how do we measure that? That's something I think we all need to be thinking about as we move into this new era.
That's a great point. It reminds us that, technology is just a tool. It's up to us to decide how we want to use it to shape the future. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we hope you'll keep exploring this topic. Keep asking questions, challenge those assumptions, and, have thoughtful conversations about the kind of world we want to create.
Remember, the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we build together.
And on that note, we'll sign off for today. Until next time, stay curious.